All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of The Market Close. It is Friday, February 23rd. We have 10 minutes left until we are officially done with February. And we are ending out today what's going on in the market on this market close. Now, on the market open, one thing that kept us later into the day or into the show was trying to watch President Trump and Zelensky do their press conference together. And unfortunately, we were not able to stay long enough in order for us to watch the press conference happen. But oh boy, did it happen. We got something that went down. Rather than me talking, I'm going to play the video of what happened, and then I will recap a day that I think will go down in history as one of the more fiery exchanges when it comes to the United States and Ukraine. Here you go. Here's what has happened today.
It's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are not
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come to the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the president for trying to bring an end to this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine that you say what problems we have?
I have been to.
Come once.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President. Do you disagree that you've had problems bringing people into your military?
We have problems.
And do you think that it's respectful to come to the Oval Office of the United States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country?
A lot of questions. Let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
First of all, during the war, everybody has problems, even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless.
God
bless. You will not have a war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that. Remember this.
I'm not
You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very good.
You will feel influence.
We're going to feel very good and very strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards. But right now, you don't. Yeah, you're playing cards. You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country. It's back to you. Far more than a lot of people said they should have.
Have you said thank you once?
A lot of times.
No, even today. You said thank you.
Even today.
You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States of America and the president who's trying to save your country.
Okay, so obviously this was the craziest shit I have personally ever seen. I mean, maybe there's some crazier shit than this, but it was kind of wild. I don't think anyone has seen this type of engagement publicly between two officials. It reminded me of 2018 with Trump and Pelosi and Schumer together as they were negotiating the new budget, which ended up leading to a shutdown because they couldn't negotiate for it. But that was pretty fiery. I did not expect to see this happening with Trump and Zelensky. Now, why did it get that intense? You might be wondering. Well, this wasn't shown in the video. We're going to watch a couple more clips of it. But essentially, Vance started talking about diplomacy and why diplomacy is so important. And Zelensky questions him, and he's like, what diplomacy are you talking about? Russia's like killing our people. And that's when Vance starts getting a bit more upset, and he's like, why are you acting like we're not trying to be engaged in diplomacy? Why are you being disrespectful? Yada, yada. And then it turned into what we saw in those final 2 minutes. As a result, the press conference that was supposed to happen, because that wasn't the press conference. That was just like a public showing of both leaders together. There was supposed to be an actual press conference like how Trump did with the UK PM yesterday. That was canceled. And Trump put out on Truth Social, he said, I don't want advantage, I want peace. He disrespected the United States of America, he being Zelensky, and its cherished Oval Office. He can come back when he's ready for peace. So you got Trump basically saying, hey, this is not happening. And as a result, we didn't end up getting the signing of the proposed minerals deal, which we talked about in the morning, that didn't happen either. So, I mean, it was just a crazy, crazy day, dude. Every single business, media, and news channel. I wish we were live for it, but unfortunately, the conference or whatever, the exchange of dialogue that they had ended up happening way too late into the day, so we weren't able to cover it live. But once I saw it, I was just like, I had the same reaction as everyone else. It was just like, holy crap, like, is this actually happening? There's a bull and the bear case on the dialogue from the comments that I read. The bull case is that Trump is standing up for people. He's putting America first. He's actually engaging in public discourse that the Biden administration never did. They never showed us the actual conversations that they were having with these leaders, and that he's putting America first by basically saying, hey, you can't treat us like that. And if you want to get a deal, then you got to get a deal done, and you got to like work with us, not be disrespectful towards us. The bear case on that entire interaction was it was childish. The way he was acting is a way that people shouldn't be seeing public officials act in public. And it was one of those things where it's like, okay, so even though he says he's putting America first, the entire allyship of the United States, which is mainly Europe and the Western part of the world, is looking at this, and they are obviously not happy that Trump is essentially treating Zelensky like a child. I mean, it was almost like he's like putting him down in front of the media and making it seem like he's bigger than him. I've heard both perspectives over the past 2 hours. Some people who just love it because they finally are getting that type of exposure to how Trump should be negotiating in the right way. And there's other people that feel that this is the most childish way for a president to act. Nonetheless, this is definitely what happened, and it's just kind of insane to see it play out. We got about 5 minutes until the market closes. In terms of what this meant for the market, well, markets you would think would hate it. Not really. Not really. The S&P 500 right here is up 1.46% on the day. NVIDIA, I bought my final shares of NVIDIA, by the way. I bought 10 more shares at 121. So NVIDIA right here, 124.55. I now have 600 shares of NVIDIA. But NVIDIA right here up 3.7%. Tesla 291. Rocket Lab came back from the depths of hell, 16 all the way to 2036. That's up 2.6%. Robinhood, $50.24. You got Google going green at 172, and you've got Palantir as well, slightly red, about to go green in 5 cents, 84.71 on the day. So you might be asking yourself, why the heck is the market going green when we just saw that type of exchange between Trump and Zelensky? And that exchange obviously being pretty aggressive between both of them. So why would the markets go green on that? Honestly, I think the market is ready to be done with February. Like I think it actually has nothing to do with the Trump exchange, although that is a big deal. But if the markets care that much about it, aka if the markets care that much about having a negotiation or a path towards peace, which is essentially what the markets thought they would get with the press conference today, they didn't end up getting it, obviously. I think they would have tanked harder on that press conference and the lack of signing on the minerals deal. It seems like they didn't care. It seems like they didn't care, and that's why we're seeing markets kind of recover towards the end of February and potentially end a bit more green than they were before. On top of that, in the morning, we also got some breaking news around GDP growth. So the Atlanta Fed put out this study saying, hey, we think GDP is going to be negative in the month of, or in the quarter of 2025, the first quarter of 2025, negative 1.5%. Now, while this is bad on the headline because it looks like recessionary, right? If we have a negative quarter that's contracting in terms of growth, I don't think the market reacted to this either, because we would have seen more red than we're seeing right now, because the contraction was based primarily on a sharp drop in net exports after the latest trade data. Let me say that again. The way the Atlanta Fed is estimating this GDP towards the negative side is based on a sharp drop in what they are estimating to be net exports after the latest market trade data. Well, why are there going to be less exports? Because everyone already loaded up a ton of products, aka they already imported many of those products in Q4. Why did they load up in Q4? Because they were afraid. They were afraid of tariffs happening in Q1, right? And so it actually kind of makes sense why that ended up going negative. So the market didn't care about the negative GDP headline. They didn't care about PCE this morning, which thank goodness came in line with expectations. And as of what I'm seeing right now, 2 minutes until we end out February, they also did not care about Zelensky and Trump engaging in the way they did. So although it's been a kind of crazy day, kind of tracking all this play out, it does make sense that we're getting a bit of rebound here. It's Friday. It's the end of the month. I think the market's just done with some of this selling. You got sellers that definitely look exhausted, and you got prices that got pretty cheap enough for people to get excited to get back in. But an absolute wild freaking day as we end out the month of February. We're going to watch a ton of more clips on that Trump Zelensky exchange. I also want to get everyone's perspectives and thoughts on what they thought of it, if they thought it was good, bad, what it makes America look like. But absolutely wild day, wild exchange. And it happened literally 2 hours ago, and the markets are trying to ingest that news and see what they can make of it. All right, here we go. About 20 seconds left until we end out February. It's been a rough February towards the latter half. It looks like a lot of green as we get into the end of February. Hopefully this green can continue into March, but it does look like we are ending out a little bit more green, at least from 2 weeks ago, based on what we're seeing as we get into the final seconds of February. Here we go. Friday, February 28th, 4 p.m. The stock market is now closed. All right, there you go. We are done with February. We are done with the stock market for February. If you survived February, congrats. It's been a hell of a month, but we are done officially with what seasonally is one of the worst times of the year for the stock market. NVIDIA ends out the day up 4%, 125.05. My average is 125.32. So nice little recovery intraday, up about 4.08%. Again, still down from where it was on earnings, but you're getting some buyers to step in. Robinhood ends out the day $50.10. Ends out February at $50, up 2.71% of the day. The S&P 500 ends out green, 1.5%. Hell of a green day on the S&P after the 3% decline we had a couple days ago. 593.70 on the S&P 500. Palantir ends out green as well. 84.91, up about 0.16%. Tesla at 292. The Tesla was at 275 earlier this morning. Now at 292, up 3.91%. Google 172. Google got to 165. That's up 1.13%. AMD's up 0.35%. Rocket Company's up 14 at 1401, up 9.2%. Rocket Lab that fell to $16 today at 2049, up 3.39%. on the day. Celsius was down about 1.5%. McDonald's was down 0.5%. Marathon was up 6.02%. MicroStrategy was actually up about 6.4% of the day at 255. Not too bad. And that is because Bitcoin ends out the day, even though Bitcoin trades forever, at 84,000, up 4.66% on the day. That is we got as we end out this market. Martin says, very pleased with Rocket Lab. Yeah, I mean, if you're holding on to a ton of Rocket Lab, you got to be pleased with that price action today. It's not $30 anymore, but it's up from 15. And really, it's up within the time span of a couple hours to get there. Grab, by the way, 485. That's up 0.41% on the day. Microsoft as well, 396. Let's look at the Max 7. Amazon ends out the day up 1.5% at 211. Meta at 668, up 1.51%. Microsoft again, 396. And then we had Apple right here. NVIDIA was at 125. Apple, 241. That's up 1.73% on the day. Oh boy. Oh boy. Oh boy. Oh boy. What a freaking day. All right. So I want to pull up more of this coverage with Trump and Zelensky and kind of see what's going on here. I didn't even get to catch all of it. I saw certain parts of it, but here are the other parts of it that that we got going on right here. And then I mean, let me know in the comments, what did people think of this? I know we have a lot of Europeans in the chat. Did you like it? Did you hate it? I know we have a lot of Americans as well that are 50-50. Some people liked it, some people hated it, but obviously there was a lot of different perspectives here in terms of how this played out and what was being said versus what happened. Here's some other clips right here. Let me pull this up real quick. The White House actually was tweeting a bunch of these clips, so they have them kind of segmented. Real quick, here's what Scott Bessent said just after what happened, and then we'll get into the other parts of those clips. Arnie said, first time I saw the USA is strong. Wow. All right, so that's an Italian's take on it.
A negotiation with the President of the United States in public like this. that we were scheduled to have lunch afterwards, and that perhaps he could have brought up some of the points. Instead, he chose to let things go into a downward spiral on worldwide television. And, again, I keep coming back to the disrespect of the American people. It was one thing for President Zelensky and I had an extended, heated negotiation in Kyiv, but we were going to get this economic agreement done. But when you bring it out to the public like this, we'll see if there's any coming back.
So the entire Trump administration kind of gearing behind this message that it was Zelensky who was disrespectful, and that is why they didn't get the job done. Here's what they had to say about NATO.
But NATO has to step up, and the Europeans have to step up more than they have. And I want to see them equalize, because they are in for far less than we're in, and they should be at least equal. You understand that? Why is the United States, we have an ocean in between. Why is the United States in for so much more money and other things as Europe? With that being said, and as you said, they've also been obviously very helpful, but we have put in far more than they have. And I think they should equalize. We're committed.
That was them talking about NATO. Here is another part of them. This is a little bit of a continuation from what we saw in the first video. So let me just play this right here. Going for this was when Vance was getting into it with him as well.
That if you will speak very loudly about the war,
he's not speaking loudly. He's not speaking loudly. Your country is in big trouble.
Can I
Wait a
answer?
minute. No. You've done a lot of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not winning. You're not winning this. You have a damn good chance of coming out okay because of us.
Mr. President, we are staying in our country, staying strong from the very beginning of the war. We've been alone, and we are thankful. I said thanks
you haven't
in
been
this
alone.
cabinet,
you
and not only in this cabinet.
We gave you, through this stupid president, $350 billion.
You voted
we gave
for
you
your
military equipment,
you
and you
voted
men
for
are
your
brave,
president.
but they had to use our military.
What about
if you didn't have our military equipment, if you didn't have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
In 3 days. I heard it from Putin. In 3 days. This is something
maybe
new.
less.
In 2 weeks. Of course, yes.
It's going to be a very hard thing to do business like this. I tell you.
Just say thank you.
I said a lot of times thank you to American people.
Except that there are disagreements, and let's go litigate those disagreements rather than trying to fight it out in the American media when you're wrong. We know that you're wrong.
But you see, I think it's good for the American people to see what's going on here. I think it's very important. That's why I kept this going so long. You have to be thankful. You don't have the cards.
Thankful.
You're buried there. Your people are dying. You're
again,
running low on soldiers.
Listen,
you're running low on soldiers. It would be a damn good thing. And then you tell us, I don't want a ceasefire. I don't want a ceasefire. I want to go and I want this. Look. If you could get a ceasefire right now, I tell you, you take it so the bullets stop flying and your men stop getting killed.
Of course, we want to stop the war.
But you're saying you don't want a ceasefire.
But I said to you,
I want a ceasefire.
With guarantees.
Because you'll get a ceasefire faster than an agreement.
Ask our people about ceasefire, what they think.
That wasn't with me.
For you
that wasn't with me. That was with a guy named Biden, who was not a smart person. That was with Obama.
It was your president.
Excuse me. That was with Obama, who gave you sheets, and I gave you javelins.
Yes.
I gave you the javelins to take out all those tanks. Obama gave you sheets. In fact, the statement is Obama gave sheets and Trump gave javelins. You got to be more thankful, because let me tell you, you don't have the cards. With us, you have the cards. But without us, you don't have any cards.
This was wild, dude. This was absolutely freaking wild. It was, I don't know, dude. It was one of those things where it's just like everyone's obviously super divided on if they thought it was good, if they thought it was bad. Originally, when I saw this break out, I thought the markets would like tank because they're like, all right, we're not getting the news that we wanted around peace. But that's not what happened. I mean, at least not today. We'll see what happens on Monday as we get into the month of March. But markets ended up to be pretty positive on this news. And I guess the only explanation for that is because they think that eventually there will be some type of peace deal that is going to happen. It's not going to happen today, obviously. Tensions are high on both sides. Zelensky was kicked out of the White House. Apparently, that's what the White House official text said, that Trump kicked him out and he didn't want to have the press conference. I'm sure he'll be invited back eventually when tensions cool down, but for now, it is pretty wild to kind of see how this is playing out. Here is what the professor had to think about this and what it means in the context of the broader stock market.
Your reaction to the events of today through the prism of geopolitics and what it could mean for this market?
Extraordinary. Yeah, all I can say. Now, I think Europe was closed, but I think futures were open and they went down. I mean, I think a lot of the rally that we had seen over the past month and a half in Europe was partly because of hopes of peace. And I mean, that's looking further away, certainly, as a result of what we saw there. I mean, as far as impact on the U.S. market, I mean, you know, previous to show you've had some discussion on oil. It's really hard to tell how that will play out. I think Europe is going to be the main impact of this break between Zelensky and Trump.
What's your general sense about where this market is? Obviously, volatility has picked up recently. There are concerns over a slowdown in the economy, and certain areas and factors within this market have been quite upset lately.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting. And I was watching 8:30, and everyone was watching the PCE deflator. I get all the data on my screen, and all of a sudden, that trade deficit came out. And I couldn't believe it. In fact, I thought it was a misprint. I mean, that's not only the biggest we've ever had in history, the change from the previous month was more than twice as great as any change we've ever had in the last 75 years. And I said, that's going to blow out GDP for the first quarter. Now, you know, first of all, I'm not agreeing with, I think the trouble with the Atlanta Fed, I mean, it comes out quick, but there's a lot of offsets to that. But almost every analyst is now down in the 1 range for GDP this first quarter, which would be the slowest in 2.5 years, which would be below the Fed target and much lower than we thought in early January. So, I mean, this is now, you know, a lot of what we, you know, trade deficit subtracts from GDP in the economy. Now, a lot of that's going into inventory. So once we get all the inventory data, some of that is going to come back. But listen, we've seen slowing on everything. Retail sales were not good in January. Jobless claims jumped above 240. Housing starts were not good. Home sales were not good. There's definitely a slowdown. I mean, honestly, that's much more important, I think, to the market than really what happened to Zelensky today.
So the professor is talking about the PCE and the Fed Atlanta GDP data that came out today. Again, this chart, it's not misleading, but as soon as it came out, even during the day, you didn't see the markets absolutely tank, which is what some people thought would happen based on these real GDP estimates, because there's so much nuance to why Q1 GDP is negative. And if it actually ends up turning negative will be yet to be seen, given it is going to be contingent on Q1 trade, import, and export data. And if it ends up being negative, that doesn't necessarily mean we're contracting. It means to an extent we're contracting, but not for the same reasons that people would think, aka more unemployment, therefore people have less money to spend. It more so has to do with a preview of tariffs or a front running of imports before those tariffs. So I think there's a lot of nuance to it. That's why I think the markets didn't take it immediately as like, oh my God, we have to sell because the economy is collapsing type of stuff. But in March, we're going to get more data that backs up the thesis on this either being positive or negative. But eventually, you know, we're going to find out. It's hard to focus on anything today outside of what's going on with Zelensky and Trump. I mean, I didn't even post the Figure podcast on Twitter today. I texted Brett. I was like, dude, like the Zelensky Trump thing is it's kind of like the only thing that people care about right now. So maybe we wait another day to put out the podcast, because this thing is just, I mean, insane. I did not expect to see that in public like that, but ended up happening. And again, I see both perspectives. I read a lot of tweets over the past hour to try to see what the left is saying, what the right is saying. And it comes down to either you thought Trump was childish in doing that in public and he's isolating an ally, or you come on the perspective of, hey, we've spent $350 billion. The American taxpayer has no understanding of why we spent that much money when there are cities in the United States that are incredibly poor and isolated and they don't have the resources, but Ukraine is getting all our resources. And as a result, Trump finally stood up for the American people. I mean, those are the two perspectives. There's kind of no gray space. You either hated it or you loved it. And I guess the market's going to figure out if they hate it or love it over the coming months as well, based on what ends up happening. One take I did hear as well is that Putin potentially has to be loving this. I mean, he's seeing a rift between the United States and Ukraine. And obviously, as a result of that, he probably is happy because he wants to weaken the allyship versus not. Question simply becomes if this was actually a rift or if this was just a show for television in the meantime. This is what Balaji, who's the former CTO of Coinbase, tweeted. He says, it is very bad when the other guys are coordinated and the home team is not coordinated. Kind of making the argument here that Russia and China are aligned, whereas the United States is not necessarily as aligned with who we would be historically aligned with, aka NATO. And that could be obviously very problematic for the broader economy and the United States in general. Fool's Gold, thank you for the $99.99 super chat. Really appreciate that. Real life, F around and find out when you take the money you need to do as told, but it sucks. That's life. I know that's definitely one perspective people were thinking about when it comes to Ukraine. And definitely people were thinking of this when Zelensky asked JD Vance, what do you mean by diplomacy? I think that's where Vance felt disrespected. Like the press conference was already quote unquote press conference. It was tense like the whole time, but those last 5 minutes when Zelensky was like, hey, JD, can I ask you a question? And JD's like, sure. And then he's like, what do you mean by diplomacy? Because you guys really haven't been that diplomatic. That's when JD switched and he was just like upset and wanted to kind of say, hey, you're being incredibly disrespectful about how you think the United States is going on diplomatically. Peter, thank you for the $20 super chat. He said, I love Trump's performance. Zelensky is entitled and ungrateful. The world leaders know now not to play with us. I think that's another perspective as well. Now, the opposite perspective to that is that world leaders are looking at this and they're thinking that they can't trust the United States anymore, which is one perspective I saw go around a lot today. The other perspective is world leaders are actually starting to respect the United States because we're not taking no for an answer. It's just like it is very polarized on which version of truth is going to play out. And I think it's going to take a few months to see how this ends up happening. I still think Russia, Ukraine, and the United States are going to get a deal done. And it's not going to happen today, obviously, but eventually that deal will happen. I don't think the war is going to continue indefinitely, or at least for the next 2 years. I think there is a peace deal, hopefully within the next 6 months. But today was not the day where it was going to happen. I mean, at the end of the day, these people are humans. The reason diplomacy is so hard, and the reason why not the United States, but the entire world, the history of humanity is filled with wars over diplomacy, is because people are emotional creatures that don't want to fight it out with our words, which is the more honorable way to go about disagreement. They want to fight it out by killing each other. And diplomacy is very, very freaking hard. And this was a perfect example of us looking at real life diplomacy that was not able to materialize in the way that I'm sure most people would have wanted it to materialize, which is a deal and a pathway to peace, because you had 3 people that got emotional. And that means on February 28th, the deal is not going to happen. A deal can happen in the future, hopefully does. But this is the sort of universal problem with the concept of diplomacy in and of itself. And we're going to see how this ends up playing out over the next couple months. Let's finish up with what the professor had to say, then we'll get to a couple other headlines as we close out the market for February.
Are you less bullish as a result?
Well, I came on CNBC January 2nd before the market opened. I said I thought we could get a correction this year, and that this year was going to be probably a gain, but really modest, more modest. And I see that, playing out at this particular point. There's a lot of challenges. I mean, a lot of people, for instance, thought that the House vote that is going to start the process was the victory for the Trump tax cuts. It is not. It's not enough. I mean, that budget, to my understanding, at least it's not enough even to extend for 7 years of the Trump tax cuts that they're going to expire in 10 months. Not even counting for what Trump wants to further tax cut after that. I mean, it's a blueprint, but it's not enough. So, I mean, there's an awful lot of negotiations going on. I think that's the most important thing, is to get those tax cuts permanent, or at least another 7 years, because with the margin, listen, you can't wait. The margin in the House is just too small, and that's what I would concentrate on the current time. And I think the market now is now. And then on top of that, of course, there's tariffs, and there's no question that sentiment declines are related to tariffs. So I mean, look at the trade deficit, the sentiment declines. People say, "Oh, let's wait. Trump might not put any of these on." So, it's not going to have the effect that you think. It's already had an effect. I mean, a tangible effect. We would not have had the super record trade deficit that we had. But we would not have had the sentiment declines that we had. They're all mentioned in that. And we don't want to know what's going to happen in 4 days or in a month and 4 days, and what kind of tariffs, and why should there be more tariffs on Mexico and Canada than China, where at least we got some bipartisan support that there should be tariffs there. We don't know where we're going in that direction. He has to nail. He's trying to do too much, in my opinion, Trump. I mean, he's trying to do good things, but too much. And, we don't want all this to fall apart, because there's a lot of good things that need to be done.
Yeah, there's a lot of uncertainty, obviously, weighing on the minds of the Fed.
Speaking of tariffs, here's another piece of news we had today as well in regards to Canada. So Bloomberg reported this about an hour ago. About Mexico, not Canada. Mexico is willing to raise tariffs on Chinese goods and buy more from the U.S. to avoid President Trump's 25% tariff. This came out, again, about an hour ago. Mexico is willing to raise tariffs on Chinese goods and find ways to buy more from the U.S. in a bid to avoid duties threatened by President Trump, according to people familiar with the matter. Mexican president administration's plans to make the offer as a part of an ongoing talk with the Trump administration. One of the people said, asking not to be identified without permission to speak publicly. Now, this is also really interesting, because it is another variable on why the markets didn't necessarily tank. What was the narrative 2 days ago? The narrative 2 days ago, when Trump was in the press conference with the United Kingdom PM, is the tariffs on Mexico and Canada are definitely going through 25%. And he said, I think March 4th is when it's happening. Now you got Mexico coming out and saying, hey, actually, no, we think we can avoid those tariffs. And the way we think we're going to try to avoid those tariffs is simply by buying more from the United States. That would definitely make the United States happy, right? If they bought more. And the number two is raising tariffs on other Chinese goods, so that the United States knows that Mexico is trying to have a more fair fight with China. So I'm not saying this is the reason why the market's kind of pumped, but this news came out after the Zelensky stuff. And now the markets go back to the same argument, which is, hey, like, are these tariffs actually going to happen? Because Trump keeps saying it's going to happen, but we can't react to that if every time there's a news update, S&P 500 again up 1.5% for the day. And the news update shows that Mexico and Canada are finding a way to skirt the tariffs by appeasing Trump by doing something else, like buying more goods, which is technically good for the United States. And they end up not getting hit with those tariffs at the end of the day. Essentially, everyone's saying that the tariffs are BS and it's not real, and Trump's using them as a negotiating card, and the markets are not factoring them as serious as they thought before. Steve can't make it on today, guys. Steve was on for an hour and a half yesterday on the market close. If you guys want to hear his take on what's going on. Also, trust me, Steve would not comment about what's going on with Zelensky. Steve tends to be a bit more apolitical when it comes to this stuff. So I don't think you would get any reaction from Steve on what's going on with Trump and Zelensky. But also, he literally can't call in right now because he's stuck in meetings. But he was on yesterday for anyone who wants to get his take on NVIDIA and everything else that happened on the market close. It was a wild day, bro. Just an absolute wild day. Call Zelensky. I do not have Zelensky's phone number. That's not gonna happen. I also don't have Vlad or Karp's phone number, even though you guys are telling me to call them. I don't have them on speed dial. On top of all of this craziness, we had Elon on Rogan today. We're definitely going to get some clips of that. Here's Elon talking about Doge from Rogan earlier today.
It was a case where we saw one person was getting $1.9 billion sent to their NGO, which basically got formed about a year ago and had no prior, really no prior activity. The whole NGO thing is a nightmare, and it's a misnomer, because if you have a government-funded non-governmental organization, you're simply a government-funded organization. It's an oxymoron.
Right. It's a loophole.
Yes. It basically, the government-funded NGOs are a way to do things that would be illegal if they were the government, but are somehow made legal if it's sent to a so-called nonprofit. These nonprofits are then used to, people cash out these nonprofits. They become very wealthy through nonprofits. They pay themselves enormous sums through these nonprofits. I mean, the reality is that our elected officials have very little power relative to the bureaucracy until Doge. So Doge is a threat to the bureaucracy. It's the first threat to the bureaucracy. Normally the bureaucracy eats revolutions for breakfast. This is the first time that they're not, that the revolution might actually succeed, that we could restore power to the people instead of power to the bureaucracy. I mean, the reality is that our elected officials have.
So, I mean, we're probably going to get a ton of content from Elon speaking on that podcast, but obviously Elon now broadcasting his views on Doge even further. The beginning of that podcast was actually kind of interesting because they were playing with Grok, the voice mode on Grok, and it was actually pretty funny. That was like the more tame part of the podcast, and then they got into all the political stuff with Doge and the government and everything else that's going on right now. But it was a wild day. It was a wild day. I tried calling Chris. He said he can't pick up right now. Let me see if he can get on the show. We'll get his take. But if we can get him on, we'll listen to what he has to say. If not, then we won't get his take right here today. In general, from the tweets I saw from Chris, he is not happy with the exchange that went on today. He feels it is... Oh, wow, look. No, this is what he tweeted 5 minutes ago. Oh, never mind. I think Chris changed his mind. I'm looking at Chris's tweet for the first time right here. He says, after watching the full press conference, I've changed my opinion on who was at fault. Trump and Vance did well, but Zelensky's eventual pushing caused the meeting to blow up. Definitely worth the watch and reassessment. Interesting. So initially, I saw Chris's tweets when this thing was breaking out. He was definitely not a fan of how Trump handled this. Looking like he's having a little bit of a change of mind right here. I think the one thing for everyone to make up their opinion on this is to kind of watch the whole thing. Even I didn't watch the entire thing, so even my mind is not really made up on how this all played out. But I saw a little bit of the end where Zelensky kept asking Vance about like diplomacy, and I think that's what pissed off Vance, because Vance was just like, dude, like the only reason you guys are even doing well is because we've been able to back you, and that's what kind of got him more mad about everything. But I guess the rest of the press conference, if you want to call it that, is up to interpretation. But when Zelensky said, hey, why are you saying diplomacy when you guys aren't diplomatically acting because Russia's killing our people? I think that's when Trump and Vance were like, hold on, buddy. Like, we gave you a lot of money. We're trying to resolve this thing. And now you're accusing us of not really being diplomatic. And that's when it started going the other direction in terms of how this played out. Let's do a poll in the chat. Let's see what you guys think. Let's do a poll. The poll is going to be pretty simple. It's black or white right here. Do you think Trump calling him out was good? So essentially, were you more a fan of Trump's performance of this on this press conference or not? That is the question here on the poll. There's not any spike in the after hours on some of the names you guys are mentioning. You might be seeing the wrong thing on Google Finance, like Rocket Lab is not up 10% after hours. That would be crazy if it is. Rocket Lab right here, 2049, MicroStrategy 255, Bitcoin 84. Again, the majority of the market really not that affected by all the crazy headlines we had today. it was a bit more flat. Robinhood is up actually after hours, almost 1%, 50-50. But I guess to end out the month of February, people started buying more than selling. 50-50 on the polls. Wow. 51% say no, 49% say yes. So just about 50-50 on do you think Trump calling him out was good? I mean, that makes sense, right? Like, I expected it to be 50-50 here. So makes sense that some people like this, some people did not like it. Amid SMCI just announced that they are building a manufacturing campus. That's got to be a good sign for NVIDIA demand too. Yeah, and that's I didn't see that headline, but let me pull it up. That's a great thing for overall chip demand. Probably not going to pump SMCI off that news, but definitely good. Yeah, SMCI expands in Silicon Valley with a massive new campus. There you go. All right, cool. Is SMCI up on this news? SMCI, no, it's down on this news. The SMCI trade has not worked out today. But that is good news that they have another campus here, third campus here in Silicon Valley. Yeah, it's literally 50-50, dude. Out of 900 votes, 50-50. I think everyone is divided on this, dude. No one is fully sold or fully in love with this, but it's one of those things where, I mean, I just, the media went insane, bro. Like, it was also, you remember that update on Palmer Luckey calling out Jason Calacanis on the freaking, what do you call it? The Epstein files. We got a response from JCal. So for those that didn't see it, Palmer Luckey tweeted this, which was a picture of Jason Calacanis' name on the Epstein files. Jason had to respond, obviously, and he responded. He said, I met Epstein a handful of times at the TED conference and in NYC in the 90s, early 2000s. This is his address book and is not his flight logs. His address book has been public for a decade, but Palmer and his crew are tweeting it today to insinuate that this is breaking news. I probably spoke to Epstein for 30 minutes in my total life. I won't list them here because of the thousands of folks who interacted with him. I suspect it will be a minuscule percentage who are up to no good. I hope you're well and wish you the best. And then Palmer says, screw you. I don't believe you. You're lying. And you're a proven liar, yada, yada. So, yeah, in terms of the JCal Epstein files, that is his response to it. This was crazy, bro. Talk about a crazy day. You have the GDP data showing negative. You have Elon with Rogan. You got Trump and Zelensky. And then you got Palmer Luckey accusing JCal of being on the Epstein files. I mean, it was just an absolutely insane day. And it was one of those days where the headlines were crazy, but it was real life in terms of what was happening. Derek, what's up, brother? We needed some normalcy here. He says, what was this week? Yeah, what was this freaking week, dude? This was wild. Derek, I texted Brett. I was like, yeah, we're going to wait to put the podcast out tomorrow, not today. And Brett was like, yeah, that makes sense. Because I was like, dude, like, it was supposed to go live at 12 p.m. on Twitter. And I was like, there's no way we can post the podcast today. Like every other tweet is about Zelensky and Trump. It's like, there's just no way anyone would care about Figure. Not today. Not after this crazy string of events that happened. So we'll be posting it tomorrow, but wild, bro. Absolutely freaking wild. I don't think there's like, having an opinion on this either. You can't win because everyone's so divided. This isn't 2 + 2 is 4. This is, I've seen so many perspectives of people that hate this, people that love this. It's just, it is what it is. It's happening. And I guess we're going to have to see how the market ultimately interprets it. Let's get an update on what happened again with that GDP reading from the Fed, inflation, and then we'll keep going from there.
No doubt. Professor, stay with me for a moment, if you would. I do want to bring in our CNBC senior economics correspondent, Steve Leisman. Steve, the Fed, as we say, trying to make sense of the uncertainty as well. Professor didn't seem to be all that bothered by the Atlanta Fed read this morning, down 1.5 for Q1. Which certainly jumps out at you. Do you want to put into perspective where you think this economy actually is?
Yeah, I'm going to apply for a TA job with Professor Siegel, Scott. I think I qualify here because I really saw a lot of what he saw in there. And I actually dug into the Atlanta Fed numbers. And get this, Scott. Atlanta Fed minus 1.5%, 3.7% negative from the trade numbers. And in fact, to serve the professor, I brought along a chart. Look at the import numbers for January, up nearly 12%. just that month. What's going on there, Scott? That's probably front-running the tariffs, people bringing stuff in. The trouble is, it could happen again in.
And again, this is what we talked about. The reason they're saying GDP will go negative in Q1 is because people are front-running the tariffs, which is very obvious, and that's actually a good reason to explain why GDP is going negative. But it could happen in consecutive quarters as well.
February, because remember, the tariffs were threatened, so it may happen again. And obviously, the professor's right about this, that when you have a big import, it subtracts from GDP. Some of it ends up in inventory. That's one set of things. I'd kind of put that aside because I think at some point that will equalize or normalize. It's the 0.9% income numbers and the negative and the small spending numbers that's more concerning to me, because you have had that decline in sentiment, somewhat related to the tariffs. And if that ends up being a spending problem, that's where you could have real economic weakness. Now, income numbers were high, spending numbers were low, savings went up. People do have the means to spend if they feel like spending. But right now, it feels like some of these policies have, scared the children here. Now, you may be giving them candy down the road if you're the administration, but right now, you're kind of scaring them with some of these tariffs, Scott. So that is not helping. And I think that that's something that's unsettling to consumers. We'll see. There was also some weather in January we're thinking about. So I'm going to just take a pause. And also, backing up the professor on this, we did look at some of the other prints on the street in terms of GDP, Scott, in the 1.5% range on the positive side, not taking as much off as the Atlanta Fed does now. It's a model. It's not the perfect model at the Atlanta Fed.
What we have seen, as you well know,
which is fair, right? It is a model. It is not a perfect model in regards to the Atlanta Fed, but obviously people do trust the Atlanta Fed, and them saying it'll go negative is something people take more seriously than not. I don't know, dude. It was a wild day. It was an absolutely wild day. You would think the markets would tank based on the multiple headlines that we saw, whether it was the GDP going negative in Q1 or this Trump-Zelensky stuff, but no, we ended up going the opposite, and that's probably because we tanked for the majority of this week so far. So the end of February ended up being a little bit green, but I really wonder what's in store for March, dude, because now if you got threats of Q1 being negative on GDP, if you got threats of inflation still being high, I mean, again, if we're not growing and inflation is high, or at least inflation is not coming down, that's stagflationary, right? And so we're going to have to see what the implications of that look like. Q1 earnings are going to be incredibly important because a lot of these companies are going to have to put up results again that proves that 2025 is not a year of declining growth, which if it is, we're going to get even more multiple compression than what we've seen in Q4. Now, granted, we're already off a decent amount from the highs on individual names, not on the overall indices, but on individual names. So that does help cushion some of the pain that could happen if there is massive declining in growth. But I still don't believe Meta is going to have some horrible decline in growth in Q1. Like the signs aren't there to necessarily see that. And they already guided for a decline in growth, which the market has interpreted in their numbers already. So I guess we're going to wait and see. AMD ended below 100 on the day, 99.86. Google was at 172. NVIDIA right here, 124.92 ending on the day. I think those are the main headlines. Let me see if there's anything else happening. That's pretty much the main stuff that happened today. Again, the Mexico stuff, we'll see if those tariffs end up becoming real. SMCI, we talked about their third campus. Here was the month of February for everybody to get a visualization of what happened. So S&P was down 1.3% for February, Q's 2.7%, Dow Jones 1.58%, IWM 5.2%. To end out the market close, let's do the year-to-date percentage as we end out February. So you can do year-to-date or month-to-date, whatever one you want to do. I'll tell you guys mine. Okay, so mine's might be a little bit skewed because, well, is this technically skewed? Yeah, this is kind of okay. So year to date, it's skewed. Okay, so mine's is not a real number. Year to date, mine's is 17%, but that's not real, dude. My options that I'm heavy in, they spiked up towards the end of the day. That tends to happen sometimes. So I would say my year to date is more so like 11%, not 17%. And my month to date says 5%. I would say that's more so like 3%. That has to do with, like, I still have those 2026 Robinhood options, right? That are deep in the money. So sometimes they just go nuclear and it spiked up a lot today because Robinhood was up, which technically is a real thing, but I can't sell them for a while. So I don't think that necessarily counts. But outside of those options, I would say it was a green month, but not a massively green month. And that was really saved towards the end of the day as everything started reversing and going green. All right. I see a lot of 2%, 3%, 4%. We have some negative percents here today. I'm beneficial, up 40%. All right. That's what being heavy in hood can do for you, even with the hood decline towards the end of the month. Why can't you sell them? I could sell them. I just don't want to, right? Because I'm collecting theta as the options continue to be in the money and get closer to expiration. I'm going to have to sell them in April to pay taxes anyway. So, but yeah, as much theta as I can collect is better. 7% for some of you guys. No Lax up 8%. Jason's up 4%. Jeremy's up 12%. All right. So even with a crappy February, as you can see right here on the screen, Amazon was down, 9% for the month. Tesla down 26%. Google down 5%. Nvidia was almost flat. Apple was up 1.62%. Even with a crappy month, the last parts of today had a decent reversal, not an amazing reversal, but decent from the absolute lows, i.e. Rocket Lab going from 15 to 20. And that is somewhat helping everyone's year-to-date percentages that they're seeing right now. Yeah, pretty much everyone I see on average is about 5 to 10%, which is not horrible to end out February with 5 to 10%. Not at all. Krishna says, do you like going into the weekend since there is no stock market drama, or do you miss the adrenaline rush on market days? You know, I love when the market's open and I love covering the markets. That is, it's just how life turned out for me. And so I really do enjoy when the market is open. The one thing I appreciate about the weekends is getting to sleep and getting some rest. So yeah, there's plenty of stuff to still do over the weekend, just with a bunch of other projects I'm working on outside of caring about the markets. But there is a certain thrill, dude, when markets open at 8 p.m. overnight on Sunday. Like, I get excited for that. And it's funny you asked this question. Steve Cohen did an interview, who's in charge of Point72, the hedge fund. And he was like, when he was growing up, the reason he loved going to work was because he wanted the markets to be open and he wanted to start trading and analyzing it. So I really do enjoy it, especially from a content perspective, getting to cover everything that's happening on a day like this with all this shit happening. You're just trying to reconcile every single narrative going on. But I do think sometimes having a little bit of less drama and being able to sleep is not the worst thing in the world. If I bought you a Mets hat, would you wear it? Evan, are you a Mets fan or a Yankee fan? Dude, I don't care about sports. It's just hats tend to have more sports logos than not. Like, I really don't care about sports. I'm not emotionally attached to the Yankees, dude. I can't name you one Yankees player. The only Yankees player I know is Alex Rodriguez, and I don't even think he's on the Yankees anymore. He's retired, right? The only thing I remember is he was on steroids a while ago, I think. Like, I don't know. But as long as I can wear a decent hat, then that's all I care about. Yeah, pretty much everyone in this 5 to 15% range. ABBV was up 19% on the month. Yes, that one also had a really good month. AbbVie, market cap of $369 billion. This one, I believe, is in the pharmaceutical space. So that one had a really good month, and it was up over the past week as well. Bro was on a debate team. That's a sport. Exactly, dude. I don't have any hats from my debate team era. I need some hats. Yeah, we never really wore hats, to be honest, which makes sense because it's a debate team. But yeah, I was more of a yapper than anything else. Exactly. Correct. All right. I think that's it. We are going into March, and hopefully March is better than February. Dude, what a crazy freaking month. Absolutely crazy day as well with this month. Did your debate team have a name? No, it was just the debate team. That's it. Pouncer Weekly is tonight. Yes, we didn't get to do it for the last 2 weeks because I was traveling. So Pouncer Weekly will be tonight. It's an important one, especially given the decline in the stock. Matt, Arnie, Amir will be with me live, and we'll try to make sense of what's happening with Palantir. I think, I think most of our takes are going to be pretty much the same, which is that stock was extended. You had a little bit of a correction. It is what it is. Overall, the company is doing well, but we'll try to break down kind of the nuance of some of the some of the reasoning for the decline that we saw in the month of February. What is the plan for March? You know, I don't really know what the plan for March is, dude. I think the plan for March is to see more of this data. So we need CPI, which is going to happen in about a week. We need PPI. We need to see if that continues to increase or decrease, and if shelter continues to be the main reason for it. We need February retail sales data. Jobless claims need to normalize. They came in a little bit above expected on Thursday, yesterday. So we need to see how that plays out. We need the new unemployment rate. Are we still at 4.1%? Is that at 4.3%? Because Elon's firing everybody. One of the headlines we saw today was Elon's firing 1,700 people that work at the Consumer Protection Finance Bureau. So inevitably, you would imagine that unemployment goes up. Is that good for inflation because people stop spending? Consumer confidence was shit in January. Is that a good thing because people stop spending? I mean, like, these are all the pieces of data that we need to put this puzzle together to try to figure out what the heck is going to happen in March. The one thing I will say, though, is that, again, fear and greed, it tends to historically be on the right side of how things work. If we are still in extreme fear in March, then I think that's consolidation for a gap up that's going to be higher. I mean, there was one reading. Well, I showed you this here today. We are in more fear than we were on August freaking 5th. That's how bad today got. We're just a little bit above it now as we ended green for the day. But I don't know, bro. I mean, are we really going below August 5th levels of low on extreme fear, which means stocks have another 10 to 15% down from here? Because if we are, I would just hope everyone has a little bit of cash to get ready to buy that dip, because I think that is absolutely a dip that you buy. But I'm not fully sold that we actually get down to those levels. And I think we are going to have to see. Spencer said I paid $30 in Robinhood fees today. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Please continue to give us these juicy Robinhood fees. Erwin said he bought more Rocket Lab today. Who bought more Rocket Lab? Put in the chat if you bought more Rocket Lab today. If you bought this dip at all, especially if you bought that $16 dip at 9:30. Put in the chat if you bought those. But we saw a really nice reversal on Rocket Lab earlier in the day. Pounter weekly covered calls are juicy. Yes, they do. I was talking to a couple people about them. I mean, people are still paying crazy premiums on the $100 call, the $90 call, the $115 call. Like, there are still plenty of people that are buying Pounter calls, which means if you want to sell those covered calls, you can take advantage of those premiums. But Pounter is definitely one of the stocks that has those premiums baked into it. Amit, when's the podcast starting? So again, the podcast came out already today with Brett. Didn't come out on Twitter. It came out on YouTube. I'll link it right here. The official podcast studio, kind of my version of, I guess, the Amit experience, like the Joe Rogan experience. That one is really going to come out once I build my studio. And the hope on that is once I move out. The hope on once I move out is July. That is my time frame on that. And I'm moving out with a location in mind that would allow me to build out a studio for that podcast. I've been looking at a lot of different apartments too. I told you guys a couple of days ago, I called the lady I'm working with when it comes to getting the apartment, and she told me that the one I really wanted, like the one I really loved, I sent a video of it to Chris, Steve, and Matt, and they loved it as well. They were like, dude, that's a nice apartment if we could get it, but it got taken. So she said to check back in around May, because that's when more people are going to move out of the building. And, you know, hopefully I'll be able to get it. It's not in Manhattan. It's in Jersey City. It's close to Manhattan, but not in Manhattan. But it's a nice apartment, dude. I don't want to show you guys. I want it to be a surprise if I actually move into it. It is like, dude, I sat in the apartment for like an hour, and I just, like, this was back in January, and I tried to just visualize my life in this apartment. And there's this big ass view when you walk right into it, and it's an open window, and it's just like, holy crap, dude. It's one of those apartments where it's like fuck, that's like, it would be a privilege to have it, but it goes by really quick. And I didn't want to get it. I'm not going to move out till the summer, so I wasn't going to get it and then pay rent for 4 months just to be able to keep it. Like, it's like that would just be a lot of waste of money. So hopefully in July, if the place I want opens up, then it'll be really cool. But I'm getting very serious about it, dude, because at this point I'm making enough connections where people want to sit down and they want to talk. And if I'm close to the city, I know it's much easier than being in a random suburb in New Jersey to actually get podcast guests. And again, the way you grow a podcast, in my opinion, is you have to have the best guests. You got to be consistent, but you got to have big names. If you don't have big names, no one's going to click on the podcast. No one's going to care. If I'm able to get big names, which I'm starting to be able to get, the question then becomes, do you have the infrastructure to record the podcast? And that just requires a better studio. Like at some point, it requires some level of investment in the space. And hopefully we can do it. I think Manhattan is worth it, dude. I've explored Manhattan real estate already. I've looked into it. The level of square footage I would get in Jersey City, which is very close to Manhattan, 15-minute train ride away from it, it's just not worth being in the city itself, financially and space-wise. So, I mean, I've explored it, but I just still can't fully make sense of it. Yo, I hate you guys. Will you host your Grindr dates there? I hate you guys. I hate you guys so much. Amit, are you ready for this plunge? Will your parents be okay without you? Yes. Dude, it's time to move out, man. I'll be, 28 by October. It is absolutely time to do it. And I'll still be in Jersey, so I'll still be able to see my parents, but it is getting to the point where I want to move out as well. And also, again, I talked about this many times, but like for the past 5 years, I wasn't, I would say, financially in a position where I could move out very comfortably. I could have moved out, but it wouldn't be comfortable. Now it's like, hopefully the market doesn't do what it did in February and March, but like and even if it does, dude, it's still comfortable enough where you can move out and you could really enjoy moving out. And that's probably the best time to move out, at least in my opinion. You have the right money and ecosystem to make sense of moving out. So now it's time. And now we got to do it as well. Who's going to bring your mom groceries in the house? Yeah, that's a good question. Imagine she makes me come back all the way from my apartment to do that. She's like, hey, can you grab the groceries? I'm like, Mom, I don't live here anymore. Why are you moving out? Well, I think it's time to move out. I stayed with my parents for a long time, dude. Well, I did move out in college, technically. So I had 4 years alone in college, but then I came back for the past 5 years. So it's just time, bro. Sometimes it's just time. And now it's time. Would you get Elon? Who knows, bro? But I think there is a world where the Elon podcast could happen, but obviously you need the studio to make it happen and you need the connections and you need to build up an inventory of guests so that they even feel comfortable trusting you on your show. And we just got to build it out to make that happen. I also, again, I really freaking think I think if I take podcasting seriously, it could be one of the biggest podcasts in the world. And the reason I think that is because the actual raw nature of the content, which ultimately makes or breaks a podcast, I think can be really well. I'm not saying I'm the perfect or I'm the best podcaster in the world, but I think I can get really good. And if I have the right guests, it can be one of those things that grows really well. So I'm fully sold on the vision in my head. It makes sense to me. It is aligned very clearly with everything else I'm doing. But now you got to set up all the annoying nitty-gritty parts of like making it happen. And that stuff matters. People tend to not, people sometimes have too much of a focus on the idea versus like the execution of building the idea. Like the Figure podcast that I did, which again is out right now. I'll put it right here. We should watch a clip of it together. We might as well watch a clip of it together. But in order to do that, you need to like have the mic set up. You need to have the audio set up. You need to have the video set up. You need to be able to be good at the small parts of making it happen in order to get the actual idea to be out there in the world. And that stuff I think can't be undermined. All right, so let's listen to about 10 minutes of this. I asked him about NVIDIA, so let's go to that part of this because I thought that was good. And then we'll listen to a little bit more of the podcast as well. So there's the link right there in the description, in the chat. You can check it out. But here is a clip from the pod.
It'll be bigger by a long shot.
What role does NVIDIA have to play in all of this? If we have hundreds of thousands of robots, billions of robots, are they all going to need GPUs?
Certainly seems that over time here, at least internally, most of our code that we're using traditionally for things in the robot are moving into inference. Obviously moving into policies that we're running on board the robot. We use NVIDIA two ways today. We use them both for training new models that we do quite a lot of now and 2 is we use it for onboard inference.
Right.
So every robot here has NVIDIA GPUs on board that run inference.
And it would be impossible to build robots.
Look at the robot in the background, bro. Look at this.
GPUs on board that run inference.
Look at that robot, bro. When you actually watch the podcast, you're gonna see that many times happen. That was his idea of just having the robot walk behind us. Insane, bro. It was crazy to see that thing just casually walking around the office.
And it would be impossible to build robots without that inference.
We need some sort of way to command actions out of the robot.
Right.
I don't necessarily think it has to be NVIDIA. I think they're great. We've had a great relationship with them. They're an investor, and I know Jensen well. He's a great guy, and the team's just been really supportive. So I think there's potentially other options besides that, but like we use them today.
Recently, you mentioned that your working sort of collaborative agreement with OpenAI is no longer happening. How are you guys training these robots? What models are you using? And OpenAI has 300 million weekly active users. They have one of the best models out there. Why aren't they inside of your robots?
Yeah, this is a good topic. We we made an announcement last week that we're like left our collaboration agreement with them. So we've been working with them. They co-led our Series B about a year ago, and working on basically just trying to develop like new AI models for robots. There's basically 2 pieces here. There's like a VLM LLM backbone that's like really important, and we call that like basically important for like semantic grounding.
Yeah.
You really need to understand like what people are saying. Like you need to like basically language condition everything. And we need to understand like, what is that object? What does that look like? And you basically the VLM like gives us that information.
Right.
And the second thing we need is real robot actions, like observation space from the robot that we can use for training. So like how does a robot like understand how to like move its arms and limbs and understand actually how to command like, trajectories to go and grab something.
Right.
And that doesn't sit like in the LLM. The LLM has no idea what that looks like. There's no robot data in there. Yeah, we basically we use open source models today, but with our own models internally and own data collection we do internally on robot, and we basically build like the foundation models ourselves.
Huh.
And we've been doing that almost exclusive, like basically ourselves for a year. We think we're the best in the world at doing this on robotics. I don't think there's anybody that's demonstrated better AI learning on robots than we put up publicly.
And that's because of the proprietary data you're collecting.
The vertical integration we do all the way from the actual hardware layer all the way into the AI neural network inference is all customized. Like we basically are designing boards and a hardware and actuators to better serve our neural nets.
Right.
And we can like recursively make that better. And it got to a point where like we were interviewing people and they're like, oh, OpenAI does your AI. And we're like, oh no, we actually do it all internally. And it's actually become like really damaging the last like year where we're like, no, we do it ourselves. Like you should join our team. The team is like completely, the team is nuts. Like everybody's like at the best in breed of what they do here on like in basic learning and robots. And I think what's really happened here is really quite interesting. Is a couple of years ago, you could make an argument that like the AI was the proprietary data set.
Yes.
And the robot hardware was like super commoditized.
This part is very important. The sort of the divide between hardware and software when it comes to what companies in robotics have a moat.
Like you don't want to be in the hardware business. Like it's like for robots. And that's like basically completely flip-flopped.
Yeah.
You basically need the robot hardware to do like in-domain robot training sets. Like you basically need to be able to grab data from the robot to do training. There is no like good hardware on the market. You can't go out and like buy a humanoid and like that's a good quality, get good hardware and to train neural nets. So basically what we were left to do is like basically build really incredible hardware from the ground up. We're now, we just got through like our 3rd generation rev at this, and we've gotten like, I would say pretty good at it. And what we're doing on top of that is building the best neural nets, basically building the best hardware for the best neural nets in the world and like going back and trying to make that better every single cycle. And, the next cycle we do will have massive improvements in robot hardware that will make the neural nets much faster and smarter and better performing. And you have like 2 different groups in the space. You have like in the landscape for this, you have like a group of folks that are trying to build like almost like Chinese robots. Like here's the hardware. We don't care about what AI is. We're agnostic to it. Here's the hardware. Let's get the hardware out. And you do whatever you want with it when you get out there,
right?
And I don't really care like what AI policies are happening. Like never did any testing around it. Don't like are agnostic to it. The other side of the group is almost like kind of like AI as a service.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of groups that come after that, like almost like I don't want to have robot hardware, but I want to build the brain for robots. So yeah, traditionally Google DeepMind's been tackling this, and NVIDIA has a team doing it. There's a couple other startups in the space doing it. Like almost like they're like the opposite. It's like orthogonal. They're like, I don't care about the robot hardware. I just care about building the brain. And what really matters is building the hardware and AI together that interact really well together.
Is that the secret that that these startups don't understand yet?
I don't know if they don't understand it, but what we really care about here is we really care about shipping. We care about giving AI a body.
Yeah.
In order to do that, the body needs to be pristine condition,
obviously,
and the AI needs to be great. And I think the other groups are just have like different business needs. I think, or maybe there's missing what's really important. And I think so. Figure kind of like lives like right in the middle. Where we like,
but that's too logical. That for the neural nets to get better, the hardware that it's trained on needs to be pristine. Why are those other startups not getting that?
I mean, like AGI, like humans can like basically operate like any robot on the planet. So like humans can like basically get in a teleoperation suit and run any robot pretty well. So you can make the argument like AGI on the limit doesn't need like to be hardware specific. They can like traverse any hardware matters. Like AI policies can be good enough to truly be able to command any robot hardware.
Do you believe in that?
We've seen no existence proof. There's some truth to this. But the real fundamental problem comes on where are you going to get that distribution for AI systems? Like for instance, like if you don't have any hardware today, like and you have like really good AI, like you just like the AI is great, you can put on any hardware. What you're going to want is you're going to want much more data, like coming off the robot, like in-domain data coming off the robot, doing use cases, the new, the next generation robots out there. You want data from that. You basically want like as much data coming off the robot at all times as possible. And how do you guarantee that you get your AI out into the world? You basically have to do one of two things. You have to either build the hardware yourself, so you can guarantee you have a place to put AI on.
Right.
And there's this exist. You can't like, go put your AI on a Roomba. Like, it needs to be like a real high DOF robot that can actually do real actions, like human level actions in the world. And the other way is like basically sign exclusive rights to the AI of that company. So you're basically.
So I thought that part of the podcast was really interesting, and we'll listen to one more quick part and then we'll be done. But the part where he's talking about the hardware versus software moat that Figure has, I thought that was interesting because he's basically saying, without saying it, all the other robot companies or the AI companies that think they can get into robotics, they're full of shit. They don't have the hardware that's necessary to train the neural nets on. And you can't just train those neural nets on more and more data from the internet, right? We're talking about embodied AI, physical AI, this robot picking up this document and recognizing that it's an actual document, or picking up an apple and knowing that it's an apple. Like, in order to do that, you have to train the robot on the data, on the bot itself, on the hardware itself of doing it, which is their new Helix AI product that they came out with a couple days ago. So, like, I would imagine Tesla Optimus is building a brain for Optimus, not just building a brain for general AI, because there's no way it's going to be congruent with the embodied version of that quote unquote brain that's general being applicable to the specificity of the robot that needs a specific brain to do it. And so that's where Brett talks a lot about being vertically integrated. Again, Figure's going to have a hard time going up against a lot of these companies. I think they're going to be one of the big ones, but it's not going to be easy competing against Tesla. But one of the ways to compete is by vertically integrating and doing it yourself and not relying on third parties like OpenAI. Here's a couple minutes of him talking about Tesla and Elon, and then we'll end it off there.
Robot. Is the space big enough for Figure and Optimus to win? Is this a winner takes all? Or how do you conceptualize the demand versus the companies chasing that demand?
My view is this looks a lot like. My view is it's going to be a small amount of. I would say like winners take most of this market. I don't believe that one group will figure out a way to be like somehow 20 years ahead of everybody else. And I also don't believe that everybody will figure this out.
Right.
So, I mean, if you looked at like electric vehicles, autonomous vehicles, I mean, hell, even eVTOL, it's like, right. Like even it's like when I started Archer, it was like, there was like an eVTOL directory.
Yeah.
It was like, I remember when we went public telling it, it was like 800, it was tracking 800 eVTOL groups. So I was doing questions. It was like, with the 800 groups that are competing against you, I'm like half of them have like cartoon drawings and they're calling them a group. But like, look at it now, it's like a lot of people went bankrupt. It's just like us. It's like Archer and Joby.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like globally, almost like, at least outside of China, like trying to go win this. That's it. And same with EVs, same with AVs. And there's be no difference for humanoids. There'll be a couple groups in the world that are really good, that soak up most of the capital, that have the best talent, that are making the fastest progress in the product. And there'll be a lot of groups that have been around the hoop for like 10, 20 years that are not making much progress, that will dwindle away. And you're seeing that now. You're seeing like there's a bunch of folks in the space that have been around for 10 years that are making almost like less progress in figure.
Right.
And there's a couple groups, I would say, in the world that are making really good progress. It's like very clear. And then you have like the China as a whole, which is like building the robots like crazy on the humanoid side. So yeah, I think it'll be a few, maybe one or two, maybe three groups that do extremely well here in the space.
Just three.
The problem is like the flywheels you want to spin are, you really, what the business really needs is like a large amount of unit volume.
Yes.
You basically want to make a lot of robots for two reasons. One is that the only way we've learned to get costs down is to make a lot of manufactured product, like basically get down the experience curve for manufacturing. So if you want cost to $10, $20, $30,000 a robot, we need to make millions of robots per year, and you need to do it really well. Second is, so you want to make a lot of robots to get costs down. And the second is you want to make a lot of robots to have like a fleet of robots that are collecting data and learning together.
Right.
One thing that's really cool about a humanoid is once one robot knows how to do something, every robot in the fleet knows it, which is like a huge advantage to humans. Like I watch all my kids learn how to walk, or learn how to do things the first time. They're not like learning from, they're learning by failure, like almost like little RL agents.
Yes.
I just fell. I learned how to do this. Okay. I fell again. I learned how to do it. I'm fine. And humanoids have this advantage of like basically doing like shared learning across the whole fleet.
Right.
So, and then in order to get there at scale, you need like an unbelievable team that can move really fast, engineer a product that actually works, that customers pay for. And you need probably, tens of billions of dollars of capital, maybe hundreds of billions. So that really is not going to be like everybody gets a shot at this. It's not right now. Like a lot of groups are not getting a shot at doing this that have been around for a long time. They're having a hard time raising funding. They're not making much traction. Like this is like going to look like every space in deep tech that we've ever seen. There's really no good example where like everybody's winning.
It's not B2B SaaS. The barrier to entry is.
It's perhaps the hardest technical problem that we have today is to make this work at scale. Or one of the top 3-5 hardest problems we have is to commercialize a humanoid robot at scale that can basically interact with the world only through like in reason with the world only through like learn neural nets.
One thing people say about Tesla is that
all right, so there you go. If you want to see the full thing, again, it's out on YouTube on the new podcast channel. You can check it out. I thought it was fun. I thought it was good. I thought it was a good pod. Definitely a pod where I learned a lot more about Figure, learned a lot more about humanoids. Certain questions I wanted to get a little bit more deeper on in terms of his personal motivations. And I think, questions could have been a little bit better from that angle. But overall, I think as kind of a first podcast in this, at least the first podcast since Vlad, because that was like the first real big one, I think it was not too bad. That's it. That is pretty much it. What a freaking wild week, dude. What an absolutely wild week. This is a slow week too, bro. Every day you wake up, you see a little bit of green, and then by 9:30, it's just gone. And then you deal with all this declining red for the rest of the day. And then maybe you get a little bit of a hint of green, and then Trump says something, and then it just goes away. And then with this whole Trump-Zelensky stuff today, absolutely wild to see this stuff playing out. Is March usually a good month? Yeah. I mean, let me get these stats on March on that picture I posted this week. March tends to be an okay month. 0.57% on average is March, which I think all of us would take. Not too bad. 0.57%. Again, February historically sucks. So kind of made sense it sucks. I think another thing is because the past 2 years have been so good, we forgot what it feels like to have a prolonged period of time where things suck. And eventually that's going to happen. I think for the next couple of years, that might not necessarily happen, given we are in a really big bull market with a lot of technological innovation that is just leading to more growth. But we felt 2 weeks of it in the latter half of February. And that is rather normal for February as well.
Min, thank you for the $5 super chat. Hey, Amit, question. When you sell part of your share on Robinhood, they use FIFO. My average went up after he sold. Better to use tax lots. I'm still new to the market. Yeah, it's up to you. It's also up to if you care about what your average looks like. They have a new way of calculating the average as well. If you have tax lots, then use tax lots if you care about the tax implications of selling your shares. If not, then whenever you sell a share on Robinhood, if you don't select tax lots, it'll immediately use the first one, right? First in, first out. So it's up to you. I think tax lots are rolled out to pretty much everybody now. Most people should have tax lots. So if you're on Hood, you should have the ability to pick which shares you want to sell. Yeah, FanPill says tax lots rolled out for me this week. I love it. Cool. So a lot more people are getting that that feature now. All right, guys. I think that's it. That is it. I'll be back on Sunday for the future show. I am going to be traveling a ton in the month of March as well. That's actually the meeting I had today at 12:30 for an event in March. There's going to be 2 events in March. So we will be still traveling in March. Maybe we can get some podcasts done on the road like we did in February. And I'll be back on the Sunday future show. I wasn't able to do it. Oh, yeah, I forgot. Last week I was sick. I forgot. I was sick. That's why we didn't do the Sunday future show. And the week before that, I was traveling. So this will be the first show in 2 weeks. And then we have Pounter Weekly tonight as well at 11 p.m. So, yeah, that's it. We are done for the month of February. Kind of sucked the past couple of weeks. Overall, the month wasn't too bad given the first 2 weeks. A lot of crazy headlines today, but that's it. We are ending out the month of February. Why did the market bounce? Dude, honestly, no one knows because there were so many reasons today for the market to not bounce based on the Zelensky stuff, the GDP reading, all that stuff. But sometimes things get just way too oversold and money ends up coming in and buying this dip. All right, cool. That is it. I'll be back on Sunday. I'll be back today for Pounter Weekly. If I don't see you guys till then, I will see you on Sunday for the future show. And we will get ready for Monday on the market open. I hope everyone enjoys their weekend. This is one of those weekends, if you are obsessed with the markets, it is a weekend you deserve to enjoy. Maybe take a little bit of time off from studying the markets, spend some time with family and friends, and we'll get back into it in a couple days. Thank you again, everybody, for showing up every single day. For all the people that stayed, even with the technical difficulties today at the end of the stream, I deeply appreciated it. When I got on my phone, maybe it is a good idea to just stream from my phone and do like a POV and walk around or something. Because as soon as I did it, I was like, oh, this might be a cool idea. I didn't know you could just like go on StreamYard through your phone and it would be streaming normally. So maybe at the events that I'm going to be at in March, we do a stream where we're live and we just do something like that. That would be kind of cool. But yeah, we can probably have some other live streams outside of just market open, market close. We have to do another chill live stream where I take out the Jaeger. It's been about 3 months since I brought out the Jaeger. So hopefully in March, we have one weekend we're free and we break out the Jaeger and we have one of those fun streams. But he's about to rant. No, I'm done, bro. I am tired. I have so much other shit I still have to finish. I got some stuff cooking up in the background, bro. You guys, in the next couple months, you'll see some new stuff. Me and my team, if you want to call it my team. It's like 2 other people I'm working with, trying to get some stuff out there. I think you guys will enjoy it. So it'll be fun. Always got to stay busy. But yes, thank you everybody for coming out every single morning and afternoon. I do not take that for granted. It is a privilege to have people actually show up every day and care about your market commentary and try to get value from the streams. I'm getting a lot of DMs and emails from a lot of people that are finding value in it. A lot of you guys are actually messaging me that are not investing people, but you're in the tech world. And so you're trying to figure out what it means to like take your tech background and apply it to financial markets, which is not easy, right? Because you could be a software engineer, a coder, or a project manager, but actually understanding the relationship between interest rates and GDP and whatever the hell JPOW says every day, it's a whole new language to kind of be able to speak. So, yeah, we're trying to break down that language every single day and keep going from there. Someone also asked, are you going to stop the market open and market close if you do the podcast? The answer is no. The goal is to do the market open, market close forever. I mean, for as long as I possibly can. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe one day it stops or not. But like, I mean, I really do enjoy doing it. I enjoy it. I have fun every single day actually breaking this stuff down and trying to make it better and better. And I would be doing it in my head anyway. Like if I wasn't doing the market open and market close while everything is happening, I would be just like talking to myself, which technically I do, right? Like I mean, this is like talking to myself, but not talking to myself, but it basically is talking to myself. That is kind of crazy if you think about it. Although people are watching on the other side of the screen, this is literally just me. Like if you recorded my day, if you were a fly on the wall, it would just be like you looking at this guy wave his arms back and forth, talking into a couple of screens. Like it is kind of insane when you think about it, but I love doing it. And I would be doing it if I didn't have an audience. And I did do it when I didn't have an audience, when only 40 people showed up to these streams. And so it's been a fun journey doing it. I think the podcast would be complementary to it. I was actually talking about this a couple of days ago. See, now you guys got me talking. I mentioned that it would be so funny if the podcast blows up, right? And it becomes like a Lex Friedman type of podcast and it's getting millions of views. And then all those people find out what I actually do, which is that I'm not a podcaster. Like I enjoy podcasting, but I'm a stock market junkie and I'm covering the markets. Like that is what I do. And if all those people that like found me through a podcast, I don't know, if I was interviewing some random philosopher or something, and then they find out like this guy rings a bell at 9:30 every morning, like it would be so crazy to see the cross section of those audiences grow. But you never know. Like maybe that might be what ends up happening. But I wouldn't stop the market open, market close. I think I would be so antsy to speak about what's happening in the market, even if it was to myself, that I might as well do it to an audience if they're willing to listen and get value from it, because I'm already analyzing it all day anyway, right? So it's like, why would I just not go live and do it? Now, granted, when you go live, you have to take the constant cyberbullying from the chat as a byproduct of going live, but still, if your skin is thick enough, you can definitely deal with that. But yeah, we're going to keep doing this forever. We're going to keep doing this forever. The chat doesn't bully. That is absolutely cap. The chat is the best at bullying. Dude, it was so funny yesterday. Oh, can I find, hold on. Let me show this for you guys. I don't know how you guys got me talking again, dude. I have so much shit I have to do, but let me pull this up. For those that weren't on the market close yesterday, this was hilarious. This part with Steve. The OGs of the channel know why this is important. But Steve said a phrase, and I told Steve he was wrong, and he couldn't believe how I was saying he was wrong. But he was wrong. So let's just let's watch this last part, and then we'll be done.
Sometimes you don't have to look for a needle in a haystack and try to be
Hold on, you mean a hay in a needle stack?
A needle in a haystack.
I don't think he ever heard my bit on this. He never heard my bit, so he's just like, "What are you talking about?" Oh, it's hay in a needle stack. You're saying it wrong.
No, Ahmed, it's a needle in a haystack.
Steve, we're in front of 3,000 people. Like, say it correctly. It's hay in a needle stack.
You don't have a stack of needles and look for hay in it.
Yeah, no. It's really hard to find one piece of hay in a stack of needles. That's the point of the metaphor.
But you don't have a stack of needles. You have a stack of hay. It's a needle. Anyway.
The chat says I'm right. I don't know what to tell you.
No.
Shout out to Gene, bro. Gene had my back. Shout out to Gene. Dude, it is kind of right, though. Like, it's harder to find a hay in a stack of needles. Like, really think about it. A needle in a stack of hays is not easy to find, but a hay in a stack of needles, which is the point of the metaphor, that it's hard to find something in a stack of something else, that it would be harder, in my opinion. Like a hay in a needle stack would be much harder than a needle in a haystack. So I do think the metaphor has some logic to it. All right, cool. That's it. I got to get out of here. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Appreciate you guys every single day. We'll be back on the Pouncer Weekly podcast tonight, 11 p.m. Eastern, and then Sunday, 7:45 for futures. We'll be back as well. All right, cool. That's it. Thank you, everybody. Love you all. Enjoy the weekend. New podcast with Figure. Brett Adcock is out. It is in the chat. You can check it out there. And I will see you guys tonight and then on Sunday for the future show. All right. That's it. Thank you, everybody. Love you all. See you guys later tonight. Bye, everyone.